My name is Alex Anderson, and I'm 78 years old now. The story I'm about to tell you happened 32 years ago, but I remember every detail like it was yesterday. Some moments in life burn themselves into your memory with such intensity that time can't fade them. This is about one of those moments, and the earthquake it triggered in my carefully constructed life. It was a Tuesday morning in March 1991 when I walked into Peter Johnson's office at Harbinger Financial in downtown Chicago. I'd rehearsed what I was going to say 1,000 times during the elevator ride to the 42nd floor. My hands weren't shaking. I was past that. I'd moved through rage, through hurt, through disbelief, and arrived at a cold determination that felt like armor. Peter's secretary, Linda, tried to stop me. "Mr. Anderson, he's in a meeting. He'll want to see me," I said, walking past her. Peter was alone, despite Linda's claim. He was standing at his floor-to-ceiling window, looking out at Lake Michigan, coffee cup in hand. The office was everything mine wasn't: corner position, mahogany furniture, photos of him shaking hands with senators and CEOs. We'd started at Harbinger the same year, 1978, but Peter had climbed faster, played the game better. Or so I'd thought. He turned when I entered, and I saw the flash of recognition in his eyes. He knew why I was there. "Alex," he said, setting down his coffee carefully. Too carefully. I closed the door behind me, took 3 steps into his office, and delivered the words I'd rehearsed. "Peter Johnson, if you don't stop messing around with my wife, then before you get fired and I file for divorce, I'll smash your face in." The threat hung in the air between us. Peter was 6 inches taller than me, probably 40 pounds heavier, had been a college football player at Northwestern. But I had something he didn't, absolutely nothing left to lose. "Alex, I think there's been a misunderstanding." "No misunderstanding. I have photos. I have credit card records. I have the doorman at the Marriott who's been very helpful about your Tuesday afternoon meetings." Peter's face went through a series of calculations. Deny? Deflect? Defend? I could see him weighing options like the financial analyst he was. "It's not what you think," he finally said. "It never is it? That's what everyone says when they're caught. It's not what you think. Like there's some noble explanation for why my wife of 18 years has been meeting you in hotels. There is, actually. Let me guess, you're planning my surprise birthday party? You're helping her invest her inheritance? You're teaching her Spanish? I'm her brother." The words didn't make sense. I knew Margaret's family. She had one sister, Claire, who lived in Boston. No brothers. Parents dead. Small family, one of the things we'd bonded over when we met. "Nice try," I said. "But Margaret doesn't have a brother." Peter walked to his desk, pulled out a folder, handed it to me. Inside were documents, birth certificates, adoption papers, DNA tests dated 2 months ago. "Half-brother," he corrected. "Same father, different mothers." Neither of us knew until recently. I stood there holding the folder, trying to make sense of documents that suggested my entire understanding of my wife's life was wrong. The birth certificate showed Peter William Johnson, born June 15, 1955, in Milwaukee. Father, William Robert Henley. The same William Henley who was Margaret's father, the man who'd supposedly died when she was 5. "This is fake," I said. "It's not." "Sit down, Alex. Please. Let me explain." I didn't sit, but I didn't leave either. I stood there, folder in hand, waiting. 2 months ago, I got a call from a lawyer in Milwaukee. My mother had died. "Your mother died 15 years ago. You took a week off." I remember because I had to cover the Steinberg account. My adoptive mother died 15 years ago. My biological mother, Nancy Johnson, died 2 months ago. I never knew she existed. She gave me up for adoption when I was 2 days old, but she kept track of me my whole life. Left me a letter explaining everything. And this relates to Margaret how? In the letter, she told me about my biological father, William Henley. Said he was married, had a family in Chicago. She was his secretary, they had an affair, she got pregnant. He paid her to disappear, to give the baby up, to never contact him again. I was still standing, still holding the folder, but the room had started to spin slightly. When I researched William Henley, Peter continued, I found his obituary from 1968. It mentioned his surviving daughter, Margaret, age 5. Your wife. So you what, decided to have an affair with your half-sister? Jesus, Alex, no. I reached out to her to connect with the only biological family I have left. The hotel meetings were because she didn't know how to tell you. She was trying to understand it herself first. Why the secrecy? Why not just tell me? Because of this. Peter gestured at me. Your reaction. Your temper. Your tendency to assume the worst and act on it. My tendency? You've been meeting my wife secretly for 2 months and I have a tendency? Check the dates on those credit card records you mentioned. They start 8 weeks ago. Right after my biological mother's funeral. Check the Marriott registry. We booked a conference room, not a bedroom. Call the doorman back. Ask him if we ever went up together. We didn't. We met in the lobby restaurant. I did sit down then, heavily, in one of Peter's leather chairs. The rage that had carried me here was dissolving into confusion. Why didn't she just tell me? Peter poured himself another coffee, offered me one. I shook my head. Because William Henley, our father, wasn't the man she thought he was. Her whole childhood was built on the myth of the perfect father who died tragically young. Learning he was alive until 1968, that he'd abandoned another family, that he was a serial adulterer, it shattered her. He was alive until 1968? But Margaret said he died in 1963. That's what her mother told her. Another lie to preserve the myth. I thought about Margaret's mother, Eleanor, who died 10 years ago. Sweet, fragile Eleanor who never remarried, who'd kept her husband's photo on the mantel like a shrine. Eleanor knew? She had to. William was paying her to maintain the fiction. I have the bank records. Christ. We sat in silence for a moment. Outside, Chicago went about its business, 42 floors below, oblivious to the personal earthquakes happening in corner offices. She was going to tell you, Peter said finally. This weekend. She wanted to understand it all first, to be able to answer your questions. My questions? My first question would have been why the secrecy? Because you're not good with complicated, Alex. You like things clean, clear, binary. Good guys and bad guys. Right and wrong. This situation is all gray area. He was right, and I hated that he was right. I'd built my life on certainty, on knowing exactly where I stood. I left Peter's office with the folder and a head full of questions. Instead of going back to my own office, I drove home to Evanston. Margaret would be at her studio. She taught pottery classes on Tuesday mornings, but I needed to be in our space, to try to make sense of this. Our house was a colonial we bought 12 years earlier, when the kids were small. Hannah was 15 now, David 13. They'd be at school, wouldn't witness their father falling apart in the living room. I sat with the documents, really reading them this time. The DNA test was legitimate. I recognized the lab, we'd used them for corporate litigation. The birth certificates looked real. The letter from Nancy Johnson to Peter was handwritten, 3 pages of careful script explaining a lifetime of secrets. My dear son, it began. If you're reading this, I'm dead, and you're about to learn truths I never had the courage to tell you while I lived. She detailed the affair with William Henley, how he promised to leave his wife, how she believed him until she'd gotten pregnant, and he'd offered her money to disappear instead. He wasn't a bad man. She wrote. Just a weak one. He loved his family and couldn't bear to hurt them, so he hurt us instead. My phone rang. Margaret. Linda called me. She said without preamble. Said you stormed into Peter's office, that you looked ready to kill someone. I was. Alex. Come home. We need to talk. I have a class. Cancel it. There was a pause. You know. I know you've been lying to me for 2 months. I haven't been lying. I've been trying to understand. Come home, Margaret. She arrived 20 minutes later, still in her clay-stained apron. She looked like she'd been crying. She stood in the doorway of the living room, not entering fully, as if maintaining escape distance. You thought I was having an affair, she said. What else was I supposed to think? Secret meetings, hotels, credit card charges you couldn't explain. You could have asked me. I did ask you. 3 weeks ago. You said you were meeting with Claire. I was too shocked to tell you the truth. I just learned my entire childhood was a lie. So you decided to lie to me too? She finally entered the room, sat across from me. I was going to tell you. I just needed time to process it. To understand what it meant. What does it mean? You have a half-brother. It's surprising, but it's not earth-shattering. Isn't it? My father was alive for 5 years after he supposedly died. He had another family he abandoned. My mother lied to me every day of my life. Everything I believed about who I am, where I come from, is false. You're still you. Am I? I'm the daughter of a serial adulterer and a woman who lived a lie for decades. What does that make me? It makes you Margaret Anderson, wife, mother, artist. Your father's sins aren't yours. She started crying then. I wanted to tell you. But every time I tried, I thought about how you'd react. You hate mess, Alex. You hate complicated family drama. And this is the definition of both. So you thought sneaking around with Peter was less complicated? I thought understanding it first would make it easier to explain. And do you? Understand it? No. I understand less now than I did before. How could my mother lie to me for 40 years? How could she look at me every day and maintain that fiction? Maybe she thought she was protecting you. Margaret laughed bitterly. From what? The truth? The chance to know my brother? Peter's not exactly brother material. You've worked in the same company for over a decade and never knew. But we felt something. Don't you see? All those office parties, those times we'd end up talking, we were drawn to each other. Some part of us recognized the connection. I thought about that. Peter and Margaret at company Christmas parties, always seeming to find each other in the crowd. I never thought anything of it. Peter was married then, happily I'd thought, until his divorce 5 years ago. What happens now? I asked. I don't know. Peter wants to be family. He's all alone since his divorce. No kids, his adoptive parents are dead, his biological mother just died. I'm literally his only family. And you want this? I want to know him. I want to understand where I come from. Is that wrong? That evening, we told the kids. Hannah, our 15-year-old, took it with the dramatic flair of a teenager. So I have a secret uncle? That's actually cool. Like something from a movie. David, 13 and pragmatic like me, had more questions. Is he rich? Are we in his will now? David. Margaret scolded. What? It's a legitimate question. He's not that kind of family, I said. He's more like a biological connection. So he is rich, but we're not in the will. David concluded. Hannah was already on the phone with her best friend. You'll never guess what just happened. And like that, our family's secret became public knowledge. By the next day, everyone at both kids' schools knew. By the end of the week, everyone at Harbinger Financial knew. The gossip mill turned it into something salacious despite the innocent truth. I was in my office that Friday when CEO Harold Morrison called me in. Alex, we need to discuss the situation with Peter Johnson. What situation? The appearance of impropriety. Your wife, his, meetings. He's her half-brother. There's no impropriety. The appearance, Alex. That matters in our business. Clients talk. The board is concerned. Concerned about what? That my wife discovered she has a sibling? Harold shifted uncomfortably. There have been suggestions that perhaps Peter used this situation to gain advantage. The Thornton account, for instance. The Thornton account. We both pitched for it last month. Peter won. I thought it was because his proposal was better, but now. Are you suggesting Peter leveraged a personal connection to my wife to beat me on Thornton? I'm not suggesting anything. I'm telling you what others are suggesting. Others being Brad Coleman? Brad Coleman, the third corner of our particular triangle of ambition. He'd been gunning for both Peter and me for years, wanting the senior vice president position we were all competing for. Brad has expressed concerns. Harold admitted. Brad would express concerns about the weather if he thought it would give him an advantage. Nevertheless, the situation needs to be managed. Either you or Peter needs to transfer to the New York office. What? Harold, that's ridiculous. It's necessary. The board has decided. You have the weekend to decide which one of you goes. I left Harold's office furious. This was Brad's doing, I was certain. He'd found a way to eliminate both his competitors at once, one shipped to New York, the other damaged by the scandal. I went to Peter's office. This time, Linda just waved me in. Let me guess, Peter said, looking up from his computer. Harold gave you the ultimatum too. You or me to New York. Brad's playing this perfectly. We could both refuse. Then we're both fired. I checked my contract. There's a clause about maintaining corporate harmony. Same. We sat there, two men who'd been rivals for 15 years, now united in our mutual destruction. I'll go, Peter said finally. Why you? Because your family is here. Your kids are in school. Margaret's studio is here. I'm single, no ties. That's not fair to you. Fair? Peter laughed. Was it fair that our father abandoned me? That your wife is my sister? That we've worked together for 15 years without knowing we were family? None of this is fair, Alex. It just is. Margaret won't forgive me if you leave because of this. Then don't tell her it's because of this. Tell her it's a good opportunity. Tell her I wanted a fresh start. Lie to her, you mean? Protect her. There's a difference. Is there? Her mother thought she was protecting her too. That weekend was tense. Margaret knew something was wrong, but I couldn't tell her about the ultimatum. She'd blame herself, and she'd already been carrying enough guilt about the secret meetings. Sunday evening, Peter came for dinner. It was the first time he'd been to our house as family rather than a colleague. The kids were fascinated by him, this sudden uncle who looked nothing like their mother but shared her mannerisms. The way they both tilted their heads when thinking, a gesture inherited from a father neither really knew. After dinner, Peter and I sat on the deck while Margaret helped the kids with homework. I've been thinking, Peter said. Maybe New York is the right move anyway. Don't try to make this noble. I'm not. But Alex, this situation, me being Margaret's brother, it's always going to be complicated at Harbinger. People will always wonder, assume things. Let them wonder. Easy for you to say. You have the established family, the clear position. I'm the interloper. You're not. I am. In every way that matters. I'm the reminder of her father's infidelity, her mother's lies. Every time she looks at me, she sees what was hidden from her. She doesn't see it that way. Doesn't she? Watch her sometimes. There's a sadness when she looks at me. Not about me, but about what I represent. He was right. I had noticed it, the way Margaret's smile never quite reached her eyes when she talked to Peter, the careful distance she maintained even while trying to be welcoming. There's something else, Peter said. Something I haven't told anyone. More secrets? One more. Nancy, my biological mother, she didn't just track me. She tracked Margaret too. She has photos, newspaper clippings. Margaret's wedding announcement, the kids' birth announcements. She stalked my family? She watched the family she thought should have been hers. In her letter, she said she almost reached out a dozen times. Almost told Margaret the truth. But she didn't. No. She said Eleanor threatened her. Said if she ever contacted Margaret, she'd go to the police, claim harassment. Eleanor knew about Nancy? The whole time. They had an agreement. Nancy stays away, Eleanor keeps the secret, William's money keeps flowing to both of them. Jesus Christ. There's more. Of course there is. Nancy left everything to me, but there was a separate envelope for Margaret. I haven't given it to her yet. Why not? Because I read it. I shouldn't have, but I did. And? William Henley didn't die in 1968. The words hung in the air. I felt like I'd been punched. What? He died in 1989. 2 years before you married Margaret. He was at your wedding. That's impossible. Peter pulled out his phone, showed me a photo. It was from our wedding, a crowd shot. In the background, an elderly man I'd assumed was one of Eleanor's relatives. That's him? That's him. He lived under an assumed name, Robert Hayes. Eleanor's cousin from Milwaukee who sometimes visited. Margaret sat on her father's lap at family gatherings thinking he was a distant cousin? According to Nancy's letter, yes. This is insane. This is what happens when lies compound over decades. They create alternate realities that eventually collapse. Margaret can't know this. She has to. It's in Nancy's letter to her. It will destroy her. Or it will finally free her from the fiction she's been living in. I thought about my wife, already reeling from learning her father had been alive 5 years longer than she'd thought. To learn he'd been alive into her adulthood, had attended our wedding, had held our children as Cousin Robert, it was too much. Give me the letter, I said. Alex, give it to me. Let me decide when she's ready. Peter studied me for a long moment, then pulled an envelope from his jacket. This is why I'm going to New York, you know. Not because of Brad or Harold or corporate impropriety. Because staying means watching these truths slowly destroy my sister. And she is my sister, whether we like it or not. I held Nancy's letter to Margaret for 3 days, carrying it in my jacket pocket like a live grenade. Each morning, I'd decide today was the day to tell her. Each evening, I'd find an excuse to wait. Margaret noticed my distance. You're angry about Peter, she said Wednesday night as we got ready for bed. About the lying. I'm not angry. You are. You've barely spoken to me since Sunday. I'm processing. Processing what? It's done. The truth is out. Peter's my brother, we're dealing with it. If only she knew how much truth was still hidden. Are you happy? I asked. About having a brother? She considered this. I'm adjusting. It's strange. I grieved being an only child for so long, and now suddenly I'm not. But he's a stranger who happens to share my DNA. He's leaving. Taking the New York position. Margaret sat up sharply. What? When did this happen? He told me Sunday. He thinks it's best for everyone. Best for everyone or best for Harbinger Financial? Both. This is about the gossip, isn't it? Harold's worried about appearances. Partly. She got out of bed, began pacing. This is my fault. If I'd just told you immediately. It's not your fault. Then whose fault is it? William Henley's, I thought. A man who died 32 years ago but whose lies were still destroying lives. Thursday, I met with Brad Coleman. He was smug, sitting in his office with its almost corner view, already measuring for Peter's or my furniture. Heard Peter's taking the New York spot, he said. Smart move. You're a bastard, Brad. I'm ambitious. There's a difference. You used my family situation for corporate gain. I used available information to highlight a potential conflict of interest. That's good business. That's backstabbing. Brad leaned back. You know what your problem is, Alex? You think there are rules. Honor, loyalty, fairness. But there aren't. There's only winning and losing. And you're winning? Looks like it. Peter's gone, you're damaged goods, and I'm the last man standing for SVP. Except you're not. What? I pulled out a folder I'd compiled over the past 3 days. Remember the Garrett account? The discrepancies in the billing? Brad's smugness faltered. That was resolved. Resolved by you hiding the evidence. But I have copies. And the Morrison deal? Your creative accounting there? You're bluffing. Call my bluff. See what Harold thinks about your flexible ethics. This is blackmail. This is leverage. There's a difference. I stood to leave. Peter goes to New York if he wants to, not because you forced it. You back off my family. And you forget about the SVP position for at least 5 years. Or I have a conversation with Harold about how you've been stealing from the company for 3 years. Brad's face was purple. You can't prove anything. I don't have to prove it. I just have to raise questions. You know how Harold feels about questions. I left him there, knowing I'd won a battle but started a war. Brad would retaliate eventually. Men like him always did. That evening Peter called. Brad withdrew his complaint to Harold. Good. What did you do? What needed to be done? Alex. You're still going to New York, aren't you? A pause. Yes. Then it doesn't matter what I did. It matters to me. You defended me. Us. Thank you. Your family now, apparently. It's what family does. Friday afternoon, I decided Margaret needed to know about Cousin Robert. Not the whole truth, not yet, but enough. I found her in her studio, working on a vase. Her hands moved with practiced precision, shaping clay into something beautiful from nothing. We need to talk about Cousin Robert, I said. Her hands stilled. What about him? You remember him? Vaguely. Mom's cousin from Milwaukee. Quiet man. Came to holidays sometimes. He wasn't your mother's cousin. Margaret turned to face me, clay still on her hands. Who was he? Your father. The vase she'd been working on collapsed. That's not possible. Peter found proof. Photos, documents. William Henley lived as Robert Hayes after faking his death. He was alive. All those years? Until 1989. He was at our wedding? Yes. He held our children? Yes. Margaret stood abruptly, went to the sink, began washing her hands obsessively. How long have you known? Since Sunday. And you're just telling me now? I was trying to figure out how. How about Margaret? Your dead father was actually alive and pretending to be your cousin. That would have worked. I was trying to protect you. From the truth? Like my mother did? The accusation stung because it was accurate. I'm sorry. Is there more? More lies, more revelations? There was Nancy's letter still in my pocket. No. I lied. Margaret laughed bitterly. You're lying right now. I can always tell. You touch your wedding ring when you lie. I looked down. I was indeed touching my ring. There's a letter, I admitted. From Nancy to you. Give it to me. Margaret. Give it to me. I handed over the envelope. She opened it with shaking hands. The letter was longer than I'd expected. Nancy had poured 30 years of observation, regret, and love into 5 pages. She wrote about watching Margaret grow up from afar, about the pride she felt at Margaret's accomplishments, about the guilt of being the other woman who broke up a family that was already broken. I loved your father, Nancy had written, but not as much as I loved the idea of him. He was weak, charming, and ultimately cruel in his kindness. He couldn't choose, so he made everyone else live with his inability to decide. Margaret read it twice, then set it down. She loved me, Margaret said quietly. This woman I never knew existed loved me like a second mother. She loved the idea of you. No. Read it again. She knew details. My favorite color at age 7. The poem I wrote that won a contest in high school. The way I laughed at my wedding. She was there, Alex. At every important moment, she was there, watching. That's stalking. That's love with no outlet. Margaret picked up the letter again. She says there are photos. Albums full. Peter has them. I want to see them. Margaret. I want to see what my life looked like from the outside. from the perspective of the woman my father loved but couldn't choose. Peter brought the album Sunday morning before his flight to New York. 3 leather-bound books documenting Margaret's life from birth to the present. We sat in our living room, Margaret, Peter, and I, turning pages of a parallel history. There was baby Margaret in the hospital, a photo taken through the nursery window. Toddler Margaret at a park, playing while Eleanor sat on a bench, unaware of the photographer. School-age Margaret at a dance recital, the photo taken from the back of the auditorium. She was always there, Margaret whispered. How did we not notice? People see what they expect to see, Peter said. A woman with a camera at a school play isn't suspicious. The photos continued through high school, college. There were several from our wedding, taken from different angles than our official photographer. Look, Margaret pointed to one. There's Dad, Robert, Cousin Robert. Whatever we're calling him. William Henley stood at the edge of the frame, watching his daughter dance with her new husband. His expression was unreadable. Did he know Nancy was there? I asked. They were in contact, Peter said. According to her letters, they met monthly until he died. They maintained their affair? No. They maintained something. Not romantic, not friendship. Just a shared secret that bonded them. Margaret turned to the last album. It contained photos of our children, Hannah and David, from infancy through recent years. She photographed my children? She wanted to know her grandchildren, Peter said gently. They're not her grandchildren. She was nothing to them. She was their grandfather's true love. That's something. Margaret closed the album. I can't do this. It's too much. She left the room. Peter and I sat in uncomfortable silence. I shouldn't have brought them, he said. She needed to see them. Did she? Or did she need to be protected from them? I don't know anymore. The line between protection and deception has gotten very blurry. Peter stood to leave. My flight's at 3. Tell Margaret. Tell her I love her. Tell her I'll call from New York. Peter. And thank you, Alex, for defending me with Brad. For accepting this insane situation. For not actually punching me that day in my office. I wanted to. I know. I would have let you. After he left, I found Margaret in our bedroom, holding the photo of William/Robert at our wedding. He walked me down the aisle, she said. My father walked me down the aisle pretending to be someone else because he was supposed to be dead. Eleanor walked you down the aisle. Robert was just a guest. But he was there. He saw it. That's something, right? I suppose. Or is it worse? That he could be there but not be there? I didn't have an answer. 2 weeks after Peter left for New York, Margaret became obsessed with understanding her father's double life. She hired a private investigator, Tom Brennan, to piece together William Henley/Robert Hayes' 30-year deception. I need to know, she said when I protested the expense. I need to understand how someone lives 2 complete lives. Tom's report, delivered a month later, was devastating in its thoroughness. William Henley hadn't just faked his death, he'd created an entirely new identity. Robert Hayes had a social security number, a driver's license, a passport. He'd worked as a consultant, had a small apartment in Milwaukee, had friends who knew nothing about his real identity. He was brilliant about it, Tom explained. Chose a cousin who died in infancy, took his identity. This was before computers made everything traceable. But why? Margaret asked. Why go to such lengths? Money, Tom said simply. He was embezzling from his company. The fake death let him escape with nearly $500,000, worth about $3 million in today's money. He stole? For years. The death was his escape plan. Margaret looked ill. So he didn't die for insurance money to support us. He died to escape prosecution. It appears so. And my mother knew. Your mother was likely complicit. She received regular payments that far exceeded any life insurance payout. I watched my wife crumble as her entire understanding of her childhood shattered. They were both criminals? They were both desperate, Tom said, trying to soften it. Your father was about to be caught. Your mother was pregnant with you. They made a choice. They made me complicit in fraud. You were a baby. I was evidence. My existence proved the timeline of their deception. After Tom left, Margaret locked herself in her studio for 3 days. I could hear her in there, breaking things, crying, creating. When she emerged, she produced a series of sculptures, fractured faces, each one showing a different angle, none of them complete. It's called The Father I Never Knew, she said. They're disturbing. Good. They should be. The sculptures were displayed at her next show. They sold immediately, bought by collectors who sensed the raw emotion without knowing the story. Margaret donated the money to a charity for children of prisoners. Seems appropriate, she said, since I'm apparently the child of a criminal. 3 months after Peter's departure, Harold Morrison had a heart attack. Massive, unexpected, fatal. He died at his desk on a Tuesday afternoon, the same desk where he'd given me the ultimatum about Peter. Brad Coleman was named interim CEO. His first call was to me. Funny how things work out, he said. Harold's death is funny. The timing. Just when I'd accepted my situation, the universe provides an opportunity. You're not getting the permanent position. The board thinks otherwise. The board doesn't know about your embezzlement. You mean the allegations you can't prove? I mean the evidence I've been gathering for 3 months. There was a pause. What do you want, Alex? Peter comes back from New York. Full reinstatement, no questions asked. That's not my call. It is now. You're interim CEO. For now. For as long as I let you be. I hung up, then called Peter. Brad's in charge. I told him. God help us all. I can get you back here if you want. How? The same way I kept you in New York. Leverage. Alex, I appreciate it, but I'm actually happy here. The New York office is different. Cleaner somehow. You sure? I'm sure. But thank you for being willing to fight for me. Your family. By marriage to my half-sister who's still processing the fact that her father was a criminal. Still family. That evening, Margaret told me she was pregnant. What? I know. I'm 39. I thought we were done. Are you happy about it? I don't know. Bringing another child into this genetic mess seems unfair. Our genes don't define us. Don't they? My father was a liar and thief. My mother was his accomplice. What if those traits are hereditary? Then our child will also inherit your creativity, your strength, your capacity for truth even when it hurts. And your stubbornness, your temper, your tendency to punch first and ask questions later. I didn't punch Peter. But you wanted to. Wanting and doing are different things. Margaret placed my hand on her still flat stomach. I want this child to be free of all these secrets. Then we'll make sure they are. But even as I said it, I wondered if anyone could truly be free of family history. Our son was born on a snowy December morning. We named him William, after Margaret's father, not to honor him, but to reclaim the name, to make it mean something better. Peter flew in from New York for the birth, the first time he'd been back to Chicago since leaving. He looks like you, Peter told Margaret, holding his nephew. Thank God, she replied. I was terrified he'd look like Dad. Would that be so bad? Yes. The christening was small, just immediate family and a few close friends. Brad Coleman had the audacity to send a gift, a silver rattle engraved with Future CEO. Passive-aggressive even in gift-giving. Margaret observed. What Brad didn't know was that I'd been working with the FBI for 6 months. His embezzlement was more extensive than I'd initially discovered. He'd been running a complex scheme involving offshore accounts and shell companies. The arrest came on a Thursday morning. Brad was led out of Harbinger Financial in handcuffs, past the employees he'd stepped on to climb the ladder, past the offices of people he'd betrayed. He called me from jail that night. You did this. You did this to yourself. I'll tell them you knew. That you were complicit. Tell them whatever you want. I have documentation proving otherwise. This isn't over, Alex. Yes, it is. Brad got 7 years. The board asked me to take over as CEO. I declined, recommending Peter instead. He's in New York, the board chair protested. He can relocate. He knows the company, he's brilliant, and he's clean. He's your brother-in-law. Which means I know his character better than most. Peter was offered the position but turned it down. I'm building something in New York, he explained. My own firm. Small, boutique, ethical. Using what capital? Nancy left me more than photos. She'd invested wisely over the years. The money from William? Initially. But she turned it into something legitimate. Something clean. 2 years after learning about Peter, Margaret had her most successful gallery opening. The theme was Inherited Lies, a collection exploring how family deceptions shape us. The centerpiece was a massive installation, a room of mirrors, each one slightly warped, reflecting distorted versions of the viewer. Hidden speakers played recordings of promises being made and broken. It's about perception, Margaret explained to a critic. How we see ourselves versus how others see us versus the truth. And what is the truth? The critic asked. That there isn't one truth. There are layers of truth, each one valid from its perspective. William was there, toddling around at 2 years old, unaware of the weight of his name or the history he carried. Hannah, now 17 and applying to colleges, served as Margaret's assistant, explaining the pieces with an understanding that surprised me. Moms turn pain into art, she told one collector. That's the ultimate revenge against those who hurt us, making something beautiful from their ugliness. David, 15 and sardonic, had a different take. It's therapy you can sell, he told his friends. Peter came for the opening, bringing a surprise, a girlfriend, Amy, a pediatrician he'd met in New York. She knows everything, he assured Margaret. The whole bizarre story. And you still dated him? Margaret asked Amy. Are you kidding? This story is fascinating. My family's boring. Everyone is who they say they are. That sounds wonderful, Margaret said wistfully. The opening was a success. Every piece sold. But more importantly, Margaret seemed to exhale a breath she'd been holding for 2 years. I'm done with this theme, she announced that night. I've explored it, expressed it, expelled it. Time to move on. To what? Joy, maybe. Or hope. Something forward-looking instead of backward-looking. Can you just decide that? To stop looking back? I can try. 5 years had passed since that morning I walked into Peter's office. William was in kindergarten, Hannah in college at Northwestern, David a senior in high school. Life had found a new rhythm, the crisis of Margaret's parentage fading into family lore. Then the letter arrived. It was from Brad Coleman, writing from federal prison. Alex, it began. I've had 5 years to think about what happened. 5 years to investigate, to piece together the truth. And I've discovered something you need to know. Harold Morrison didn't have a heart attack. He was poisoned. I know because I've been corresponding with another inmate here, a man named Vincent Craig. He knew things about Harold's death that were never made public. Details about the potassium chloride found in Harold's system, dismissed as a medical anomaly. Vincent says Harold was murdered because he was about to expose something bigger than my embezzlement. Something involving William Henley's fake death and several other prominent Chicago businessmen from the 1960s. Your father-in-law wasn't the only one who faked his death to escape prosecution. There was a network of them, all helping each other disappear, all with new identities. Harold had discovered this and was going to the FBI. Someone stopped him. I don't know who, but I know it's connected to your family. Be careful, Alex. The past isn't as dead as you think. Brad. I showed the letter to Margaret. He's lying, she said immediately. Trying to cause trouble from prison. Maybe. But what if he's not? Then we leave it alone. My father is dead, really dead this time. Harold is dead. What good comes from investigating? The truth? We've had enough truth for one lifetime. But I couldn't leave it alone. I hired Tom Brennan again, asked him to look into Harold's death and the network Brad mentioned. Tom's report was disturbing. There were indeed several fake deaths among Chicago businessmen in the 1960s. He confirmed. At least 5 that I can document. All were under investigation for various financial crimes. All died within a 2-year period. Including William Henley? He seems to have been the first. Maybe the architect of the scheme. And Harold knew? Harold's private files suggest he'd discovered something. But those files are now missing. Destroyed? Or taken? By whom? That's the million-dollar question. The answer came from an unexpected source, Eleanor's sister, Agnes, now 91 and in a nursing home. Margaret and I visited her after Tom suggested she might know something. Agnes, Margaret said gently, we need to ask about William. About the network. Agnes's clouded eyes suddenly sharpened. You know? We know some. We need to know more. Agnes was quiet for so long I thought she'd fallen asleep. Then she spoke. Eleanor was the mastermind. Margaret gasped. What? Your mother. She designed the whole scheme. William was weak, would have been caught. Eleanor saw an opportunity. Fake his death, collect insurance, help others do the same for a fee. My mother was running a criminal enterprise. She was surviving. A woman in the 1960s with a child, no real job skills. She used what she had, intelligence and desperation. How many? 7 men total. Each paid Eleanor to help them disappear. She created their new identities, arranged their deaths, managed the logistics. And they all lived? Most. 2 really did die later. Robert Hayes was one of them. Your father, Margaret. But Harold Morrison. Found out. Eleanor's nephew, bright boy. Too bright. He pieced it together from old records. Did Mom have him killed? Margaret asked, her voice barely a whisper. Agnes laughed, a sound like rustling leaves. Eleanor? No. But one of the others might have. They had a lot to lose if exposed. Who? I don't know. I didn't want to know. We left the nursing home in stunned silence. Eleanor, sweet, fragile Eleanor, had been a criminal mastermind. It keeps getting worse, Margaret said in the car. Every truth is uglier than the last. Your mother was brilliant, I said. Criminal, but brilliant. Is that supposed to make me feel better? It's supposed to help you understand. She wasn't just a victim or an accomplice. She was the architect. Of fraud. Of deception. Of survival. I'm 78 now, telling this story from my study in the house Hannah bought for us when we retired. Margaret is in her studio, working on what she calls her final series. Sculptures of truth and lies intertwined so tightly they can't be separated. Peter visits monthly from New York, where his firm has become wildly successful. He married Amy, had 3 children who call Margaret, and Maggie, with no irony or asterisks. William, our surprise child, is 32 now, a journalist who's written extensively about family secrets and their impact on identity. He published a book about our story, with our permission, called The Cousin Who Was My Grandfather. It became a bestseller. Hannah is a professor of psychology, specializing in family dynamics and inherited trauma. David became, of all things, a private investigator, saying our family drama gave him a taste for uncovering truth. Brad Coleman died in prison 3 years ago. Heart attack, supposedly natural. We didn't investigate. The network of fake deaths from the 1960s was never fully exposed. Some secrets, we decided, should die with their keepers. But one final truth emerged just last year. Margaret received a letter from a law firm in Switzerland. Nancy Johnson, Peter's biological mother, had maintained one last secret, a Swiss bank account with millions in it, accumulated over decades from the initial seed money William had paid her to disappear. "It's yours by right," the letter said. "The daughter William should have acknowledged. Margaret donated it all to charity, every penny." "It's blood money," she said. "I don't want it. It could secure our grandchildren's futures." "Our grandchildren's futures are already secure. They have the truth. That's worth more than stolen money." She was right, of course. The truth, messy, painful, complicated, was what we'd all been seeking. That day 32 years ago, when I walked into Peter's office ready to fight, I thought I was defending my marriage from an affair. Instead, I uncovered a web of deception spanning generations. William Henley's fake death. Eleanor's criminal network. Nancy's parallel life documenting the family she couldn't claim. Peter's existence as the brother Margaret never knew she had. Harold's murder. Brad's embezzlement. Each truth led to another, like Russian dolls of deception, each one hidden inside the last. But here's what I've learned: every family has these dolls. These nested secrets. The difference is whether you open them or let them remain closed. We opened ours. All of them. It nearly destroyed us, but what we rebuilt was stronger because it was built on truth rather than lies. Margaret still makes art about family secrets, but now it's different. Now it's about the beauty that comes from brokenness, the strength that comes from surviving truth. Peter found the family he'd been seeking his whole life, complicated, messy, but real. I learned that marriage can survive almost anything if both people choose to stay and rebuild. Our children learned their history, all of it, and chose to write better stories for their own lives. And William Henley? The man whose death started it all. We had him properly buried under his real name last year. Peter, Margaret, and I stood at the grave as they lowered the coffin containing the man who'd been father, stranger, cousin, ghost. "What do you say at the grave of someone who lived multiple lives?" Margaret asked. "You say goodbye to all of them," Peter answered. So we did. Goodbye to William Henley, the father who died too young. Goodbye to Robert Hayes, the cousin who wasn't. Goodbye to the thief, the liar, the weak man who couldn't choose. Goodbye to the ghost who haunted 3 generations. But also, thank you. Because without his deception, Peter and Margaret would never have found each other. Without the crisis, we would never have examined our lives so deeply. Without the lies, we would never have fought so hard for truth. The inscription on his headstone reads, William Robert Henley, 1925 to 1989. Father, mystery, catalyst for truth. Finally at rest. It's more honest than anything he ever said in life. And that, perhaps, is the ultimate revenge against those who lie, to tell the truth about them, completely and without flinching, and then to live better lives because of what their deception taught us. That morning when I walked into Peter's office saying, Peter Johnson, if you don't stop messing around with my wife, then before you get fired and I file for divorce, I'll smash your face in, I thought I was ending something. I was actually beginning everything.